Hello everybody and welcome to a Psychic Affair. Today I'm doing aura readings and having a look at auras and discussing auras. First up, I'd like to point out that they're not all layered and neat and tidy. You know, you see these pictures that they're like a cocoon outside your body and that there's this layer and that layer. While it's convenient, you know, and I do teach how to read aura and I do have the vibrational expansion technique of energy therapy, which is a huge program, a huge course in actual fact for practitioners. Part of what I try to teach is that, you know, this energy is coming from the cells, the physical cells in your body. Science has proven that well and truly and beyond any kind of question. And so as it's coming out of that body, it's expressing in light form how you use energy, how you've used energy, what you understand about yourself, what you understand about the world at large, the environment, who you are as a person, your personality. All of these things come into play when we're looking at the aura. There are also aspects of interaction, and that's how you respond to others or interact or even respond to a future scenario. So we can see how it evolves. There's a logic, if you like, about how your energy evolves. Hi, Michelle. Welcome. Great to see you. That how it evolves is determined pretty much the same way as you might think. If you watch somebody walking down the street, you know that for them to get to the corner, they have to take X amount of steps, this left foot, then that right foot, etc., etc. And the way they're motivating down the road will describe to you pretty much what kind of body shape they're in, right? Whether they're loose, whether they're fit, whether they're healthy. All of those things are given to you directly with that visual information. And I see the aura pretty much the same. I do see that the information that comes is far more complex. Obviously, for example, a physiological issue will be expressed in the aura, but it may have a few potentials and possibilities. But you're also looking at the emotional, mental aspect, not just a physiological position of a problem. So quite fascinating in that respect. When I read forward and I'm looking at projections and I'm looking at future projections, then I'm seeing how your energy interacts with those other people around you. You can actually see spots and movement and change. And you know that that's in play now, even if you're not quite conscious of it, even if you're not aware of it, it's in play now and you will find yourself reacting or responding to it. Based on this chakra information, which I'm going to get round to and show you, based on the chakra information, it's pretty easy to really see how a person's likely to respond in any scenario. Interestingly enough, when I do long distance readings, which is 99% of the work, and you're in a chat, you can't see a person, you usually don't have a real name, all of that stuff's going on. You can feel a person's negativity. You can feel the anger and the response that they've got. You can feel the jumpiness of the energy as a person tries to jump around and maybe tell you an untruth. You can feel all of that going on. But you can't actually express that you know any of it. You simply can, you can only really as a therapist or as a worker, you can only go forward and you can just keep pushing forward. But you know when something's going to come back and bite at you because a person's having a negative response to something they're hearing. Quite an interesting thing. And so when the words come back at you in the type or in the chat, there's no real surprise in it, and you pretty much know every time that that's the way it's going to go. But it's not my job to avoid those situations. It's simply to manage them when they happen. What we've got here is Mike, and looking at Mike's aura, it's really easy to see he's pretty pleased with himself. Now you can see that he's got a nice big fat fish, but also that nice big fat fish, it's probably not the best thing he's ever caught or whatever, but he's really happy with himself on the day. He's a bright sort of a bloke. You can see lots of little bright lights above his head, which means he's an ideas guy, that he's always got ideas and he's probably going to follow them through. He's got a lot of orange it's orange really, orange to dark reds and browns around his groin area, around the pelvic area, and that tells you that he's an action man, that he's going to get on with things. So where colour's positioned on the body will also determine what effect it has or what it's responding to, whether it's a motivator, whether it's a thought process, whether it's an emotion, whether it's a weight, like on your shoulders, or whether it's something that's a duty, it's something that's obligation bound, whether it's directional at your feet and your knees, cooperative, all of these things with your elbows, whether you need space. And you can actually see he's got quite a bright spot around around his elbow here, and that's his right elbow, and it's off out sticking out there. And that usually means he's a guy who likes to be given his freedom. That is to say, if he's going to do something, just leave him alone. Set him at the task and leave him alone so he can get on with it. He'll be quite inventive and he'll sort that out for himself. He's got a lot of very pale blue, so his past does play a role in his present, but in a positive way. He learns from his mistakes, in other words, and he's probably a very good learner. He takes information on board very, very cleanly, very, very clearly, and is able to transfer that into action. He's able to take an idea, he's able to take a concept and then turn it into a reality. He's a problem solver. He's the guy that will sit out the back and think, I don't have something to do this job with, what can I use? And he will make something, or he will, he will repurpose something to do the job. So it's an inventive energy, it's a creative energy, it's a bright energy. Even though right now he's looking pretty pleased with himself, that's not what he's all about. So pretty good. We move on to the chakras, and I just wanted you to have a look at this because these chakras is pretty much when I do a chakra reading, this is a training diagram, and so it shows you what they should sort of look like. Like nobody's perfect and nothing is perfect all the time. But you want nice, bright openings. You want to be able to see all of that light up and down the column, up and down the central column. You want to be able to see whatever the colours are, that they're moving in an orderly fashion, as odd as that might sound, that they're moving in a way that makes sense. You know, if you look at this, it's actually quite harmonic. It looks quite nice. There's a couple of areas you go, might want to adjust that. But there's nothing major in there, and everything seems to work fairly well together. And so looking at the aura, that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. I'm looking for lighter. I'm looking for things working well together. And then, of course, I go and pick on the bits that aren't doing so well. And those are the things that we will address. When we've got this idea of what a future might look like, this is a future projection. And that's what it looks like. It's not as tidy because you're looking at different frameworks. So you're not looking at a single aura there. What I'm looking for there, when I go to it, there's 6 months, 12 months, and 18 months. You're looking for where's the change, what's the consistency. And when you see the consistency, as in this particular case, you can see it running all the way down that lilac. That tells you that's something that's going to follow through for quite a long time. They're going to follow that energy, or it's going to be with them for quite a long time. That's not a good or a bad thing, but if it's a challenging energy, you want it to move along. There are a few challenging spots. There's one here at the elbow. There's some more down here a little bit further. They're isolated, so those are events, those are moments in time that this person, she will have to deal with and then move on from. Because they are there temporarily, she will do that. So that can be an injury. I'm not going to read her stuff to you, but basically you're looking at that kind of energy. Anywhere you've got big loads of energy that's passing through a number of months, like a year, that says that energy is going to be in play for a while now. Why that's not a bad thing is if you start a course of learning, if you enter into a relationship, these are the future projection energies that we're looking at, that it's stable and it's consistent, and then it's moving forward. So now it's, the colour is there, but secondary to the motion. That is to say, if I see something going wrong and it's there, it's just there for a short time, I can see that change in the energy and then it just wafts out. It's an event, it will happen, you have to get through it, but it won't last long. Tarot cards can tell you that as well, so that's quite an interesting area. But that's what you're looking for. Is something going to last long? Is it going to follow through? People quite often will come and ask me, am I going to finish my course? Am I going to do this? Usually you know inside yourself the things that you are actually going to do and able to do. But if you're worried about finishing and follow through, I can actually see usually with a future projection whether that's what you're going to do. So quite interesting, quite good fun. We've also got, when we do a direct chakra reading, this is what that looks like. And all I'm really interested in when I do a chakra reading like this is what's going on and how are things working together. Because the chakras are really like pressure points. They're like trigger points more than pressure points. They're like trigger points where everything, to make the whole muscle move, a trigger point is the area where the pressure comes into. And you can release the pressure from those muscle groups by using trigger point therapy. Now, it releases really nicely because what it's doing, and while it feels tender, what it's doing is it's taking the pressure off the rest of the muscle and localizing it so you can keep going. Now, unfortunately, that often means you can keep making the problem worse because it needed to release and it needed to relax and it needed to start moving correctly. So what the trigger points actually do is they hold a position, and it mightn't be the best position, but it's the only position available to that muscle group. So quite an interesting thing. And chakras I see as the same thing. They are showing me everything that's ever happened, pretty much. They go right deep into the body, and they're responding to a whole group or a part of the body and how that's working energy, what your understanding of life is that working for you? And you've got a front and a back. It goes right through the body, and so the back may not be the same as the front. So typically we express through the front. That is what we want people to see, what we're happy for them to see, what we want them to believe. And then what's sitting out the back is a little bit less there. It's a little bit more discreet, and sometimes we're not as cognizant of that ourselves. We don't always understand what's going on out the back there ourselves. And that's usually related to past energies, past behaviours, past experiences that can go all the way back to conception, by the way. And so that's where they can be a little bit harder to shift. There are also the denial areas where a person will not recognise that in themselves, but they'll recognise it in others. So let's say if you've got a behaviour in somebody else that you really don't like, one person or different people, if there's a behaviour you really don't like, you need to step back and decide, is that something I do? Because usually when we're making a judgment like that, unless it's like, they're thieves or murderers or something specific, if it's in general or a personality trait or a way that they speak or just something about them that you just isolate on and just go, I just don't like that about that person, 9 times out of 10 it's actually something that we've got within ourselves that we're not particularly enjoying or we don't particularly like. When you address it from that perspective, then you find yourself in a position where you can actually make the changes that you'd like to make in your life. One of the first things about making a change, especially for something that's been sitting there for a long time, is what I call the cringe. And the cringe is that moment where you go, yeah, actually I do that. In fact, the more you recognise that in yourself, that this is what you do, you're doing that, the less judgmental you'll be about others. And it doesn't mean you can't push for the things that you want. And if you've got a relationship, there may be things that you want to have in a particular way, a particular style of thing. But it allows you to determine whether it's them or whether you're part of the problem. And that's important, because if it is them and it's something that you can't stand, something you can't live with, you just know that things will break down at some point, because that will become glaring, and it will poke you in the face all the time. If it is something you're doing that you don't like about yourself, once you alter that behaviour, the fact that they're doing it to a certain extent may not be as important, or you may find that they evolve that behaviour a little bit too. So that's the sort of thing that we're looking at there. Quite fascinating at the very, very least. Now here we have another future projection, and the reason I'm showing this future projection, and if you're listening on Spreaker or iHeartRadio, pop along to intuitalks.com, pop along to energy-therapies.intuitalks.com, and you can have a look at the archive shows. There's quite a lot of them there, not just the Aura show. Why I showed you this one is you can see real extreme differences between the one spot where they start and each progressive month. You can see very different and specific shapes going in different directions, and that tells you this person's going to do a big swing from one belief in one direction and go completely in another direction. There's a certain amount of health issues in there. There's a lot of instability in there, and over a period of the next 18 months it's still there. And why that's important for her to know, and why it was important for her to know, was that it gave her an opportunity to decide whether she could stabilise herself now and not go through all of that. So we're in a position where you can just live the drama, or you can sit there and go, what am I doing that creates this for myself? Why is it that my life is swinging from left to right? Why does it scream from pillar to post? Why is it that I'm unstable? And in 18 months' time, if I'm still unstable, why is it that I'm not changing the things I need to change so that it's now and not in my future as well? And those are the things that happen. As it turns out, this person's done exactly that. We are now well over 2 years after I did this for her. And she ended up coming back and saying, well, everything you said about that was a lot more specific than this, of course, was absolutely correct. And, of course, where I was with that was that basic idea of saying, well, why didn't you change it? You didn't have to live it. You didn't have to get to where you are today and still be in that position. So there are things that you can do to change things. And one of probably the most powerful pieces of advice I can give about that always is that you change the little things. You change the things that you do every single bloody day. If you do something every day, it'll have a greater impact over your life than something that you do on occasion, right? So you're looking for that. We've also got this situation where people are technically hard to read, not for necessarily somebody like us, but you'll get to know a person, and you've got the saying, the saying about seeing somebody's true colours, this is one of those sort of situations. This person, their head's just in here. You can see it right there. And you can see that that would be in here. So their aura is really close. It's really dense. That means they're not going to listen. They're not hearing. Their communication would be difficult with them. They've got their own mindset. They've got their own space. Literally, that's where I'm at, and nothing's going to change that. There's a little bit of golden in the heart area, so it's a person who possibly wants to love, wants to be loved, all of that stuff, but hasn't necessarily got the wherewithal to pull it all together. You would not see these colours when you meet this person. If you did, you wouldn't like them, to be honest. You wouldn't want to bother with them. You might not even notice them, or you would think they were a fairly angry person. But in the main, what you're looking for is that this person hasn't really got a lot to give. I suppose that's the long and the short of it. And it doesn't matter how much you want them to have something to give, they haven't got it. And that's because they are centrally focused. That means they're focused on themselves. You can call it selfish, but I'd call it in this particular case, or cases like this where you're looking at something that's so close that their self is like the safe place for them to be. If they don't step out, if they don't stretch out, if they don't, if they don't give, then they can't be hurt. And in fact, this person did used to say that a lot. He says, if you've got expectation, you'd just be disappointed. So those words, most people's energy is reflected in their words if you're open to hearing it, whether you want to hear it or not. And when a person's always trying to get out of things, or they're always trying to not contribute, or they're trying to avoid things, that person will do that in every single situation, no matter how important it is, and you'll find yourself just frustrated. It's a lazy energy, if you like. It's too lazy to stretch and grow, and so it stays the same. So I would say that this person set this energy quite possibly in their teens, as young as that at some point. They have decided this is how it's going to be, and so what? So that's what we've got out of the way. Now, the next one I've got is a current reading. It's today's show, and this is Michelle. Yay! Poor Michelle. We had to miss you out last week because of the audio issues, but we are all back, and what a beautiful photo it is too. Now, I don't know if you're seeing what you expected to see, but I'll go for it because there's nobody else I have to do today, so I'm going to do you, and then we'll cut out of here. There's this lovely, what I would describe best as sort of almost like balls, I guess, but within them, these lighter colours, and they're just strapped within them. They're like little shards of light, and it was something that when I do depict the aura, I always wish, I wish I could show that better, I wish I could really pull that out of there and make that look more like what it is. They're little shards of light, and some of them are quite delicate, and like this silver over here is what that was. The silver it's quite noticeable and much easier to see. It was like brighter, but the others were sort of muted and just sort of finding their way out of there. And it was a lot of movement forward and back and forward and back. So your mind wanders, love. There's no doubt to me that your mind wanders into these little different areas, and then you'll get caught on a track. And you might even say these words, I just got on this track, and then I stayed on this track for a while, and I couldn't get off it, even if you're meant to be doing something else or thinking something else. That tracks, and that's the best way I can describe them. And once you get into these tracks, your mind will follow that track and stay on that track until it skips and jumps onto the next one. So they're kind of like conduits with lots of little wee lights, and it's almost like skipping from one to the next. So kind of interesting. Now, we've got this nice yellow and gold up here. It is more yellow than gold, but it's not really mustard. And in that, there's always that seeking for, I think the word would be perfection, seeking for something better, seeking better in yourself, seeking better in others. So you could on occasion be a little demanding, or that's not just of others, of yourself. I don't want to say the word perfectionist because it's such a negative connotation, but it is a high expectation, that's for sure. And it's of yourself as well as of others. So when somebody lets you down, you feel incredibly disappointed. It takes you quite a while to come back from that. So the expectation sometimes outstrips another person's willingness or outstrips where they are, because it's sort of like a golden bubble. It's like, this is what I see in them. Oh no, they're not that. Oh, and there's disappointment with that. So I find that a little bit interesting. It would be one of those energies that you would sit there after a time and go, I should have learned by now. But in actual fact, it's not a bad energy. It's just everybody's different. And if you allow them to show you who they are rather than you deciding who they are, you might find that that's a little bit easier to deal with. We've got this lovely aqua, but we've got a darker green in here. So there is a past that we're looking at here. There's a past that you want to take the positive out of, and you may say that to yourself as well. I know that happened to me for a reason. So when things go a little bit wrong, but there's also a little bit of resentment about that. Like, why do I have to live that? Why should that happen to me, or why should it have happened to me? There's a little bit of not understanding. I think that when it comes to that dark green colour and it's right into the back of your head, it would prey on your mind when things go wrong with somebody else. It could be a conversation that just went left, a minor argument. It could be quite peripheral, quite surface, but it will prey on your mind, or it'll be in the back of your mind. And you're looking for the reasons why, when probably the best question would be if not so much a question, it would be just a best, well, that happened. Do I need to know that person? Do I need to get into that again? Is there any way that I triggered that? And then let it go. It's saying, we live in a world, things happen. Not everything's nice. And I was listening to a guy being interviewed. I can't even remember who he was in the last few days. And of course, there's been some awful things happen in the world. And he kept going on about evil, evil, evil. And I thought, you know what? We'd be a lot healthier as a world, as a global population, we got away from that idea of the word evil, because people who hear that, and especially if there's a religious connotation, but even if there's not, evil is beyond the person. And so what if we just brought it right back and go, well, that person is one nasty bugger. That's a horrible person. And then deal with people from that perspective and deal with situations. And not everything's our fault in that regard. Then it's not our fault. We weren't in the wrong place at the wrong time. We were just where we were as part of a global energy, but also as a part of an individual lifestyle. We're just where we are. So when things tend to go wrong, sometimes we could help it, and sometimes we can't. Sometimes we're just living our lives, and things go on with us. We have these purpley rosy energies out the back here. I hope you can see those fairly clearly. I will email you this picture so you can look at it properly. These are an interesting guidance energy. So you may sort of feel like somebody's nudging you along. You may feel like you've got something going on in the background. Maybe a guide, if you like, because it's definitely guidance colour. That nice deep magenta rose sort of colour is getting instruction, I suppose, would be a good way to put that. But it's way out behind you there. And so because it is, it would be like calling in information from a guide, that sort of feeling in dreams, meditations, that kind of information that comes to you when you're in a more relaxed state, when you're not quite with it, when you're not quite in the program. The silver here, just above your head. Now, this is the most interesting to me, the most fun to me. That's inventiveness. It's a unique quality, and it's not just about being different. It's really about seeing things differently, and people may say that to you too, that you have a unique perspective. Inventiveness is more about, it doesn't matter if it hasn't been done before, I can do this. It's about you creating from inside your mind the solution. Inside your mind, you're creating the response or the interpretation or whatever it might be. If it's artistic, whatever that picture might be, whatever that word or writing might be, it's not a compilation of everything you see around you. It's more something that came from inside you, which is pretty awesome. But it also doesn't have validation. When you get something from inside you, and it's something that you just know this will work, or you just know you're going to try this, or you just have this light go off in your head and this is the way to do that. And you're always finding the better way rather than looking for the better way. Does that make sense? It just happens that way. Or you just completely do it different in a way that works for you but wouldn't necessarily work for anybody else. So it's sort of your own drum beat, if you like. But it's not totally independent energy. It's very much an individual or unique energy. So I really like it. And it's inventive. This is the colour that you'd see a lot around the absent-minded professor type, inventor type, because it's where it is, right at the top and close into your head. Possibly you could get a bit scatterbrained when you're running those kind of thoughts and energies. You might find that you zone out a little bit and have to pull yourself back in. But they are reaching out energies to beyond what we know is around us. So it's not a compilation at all. Carl Jung said years and years ago, obviously years ago, that none of us have an individual or unique thought. None of us think for ourselves. That all we do is we pull in thoughts as a collective from space, from, some kind of, I don't suppose weird is the right word, but from a collective unconscious, he called it, the collective unconscious, and that every thought that's ever happened on the whole planet, ever, anything that's ever been written, anything that's ever been said, anything that's ever been done, is held in this big, huge compilation of energy. And that what happens is at certain times we start pulling in on that energy and putting it together with a more modern knowledge. And so then we can create something new, or we can develop a new idea. And it's hard to resist that as a truth when you look at how populations, towns, different groups, how they evolve something new all at the same time, even if they're not speaking to each other. Now, that's harder to imagine in a modern world with the internet and all of that. But if you do go back a couple of hundred years when we didn't have that, it is noticeable. People are trying to build planes at the same time. They're trying to build cars at the same time. In different countries of the world, they're trying to do certain things at the same time. And there's always, we talk about this race to get this going. Well, it is only a race because they're all doing it at the same time. And it was an interesting thought that it becomes a powerful push and a powerful drive at the same time. So that's in the Carl Jung frame. When you've got the inventive, unique energy, then I say, well, there's something else going on there. When my son was really little, and he was about 3.5, coming up to 4 years old. My daughter had started school, and she'd come home with little math problems, and she'd struggle a little bit with those. And he would sit there and he would have the answer. And I'd just look at him and think, well, I read to you, but I didn't do math with you. So you could understand why a child might be better at picking up words, etc., because you've read to them and you've shown them books and they've retained that, and they get to school and, one learns faster than the other. But I never did math with my kids, and certainly not at those ages. And there he was. He just had the answer. He was a real whiz with puzzles. He could just do those things. And that's the kind of energy we're talking about. He can just do it. He's just accessing whatever it is to be able to just do it. And so that's that silver, that's that unique energy. Now we've got this, and I do have to address this. We've got this spot, and we've got a larger area around your third eye region. It looks a little bit off there, but actually it just sort of moves a little bit. We've got the indigo right in the center, so that's a sensitivity. As a sensitivity, it's easy to be wounded before somebody actually does something wrong, because it's in the third eye area. So that comes back to that expectation as well. I just know they're going to let me down kind of a feeling, which is a bit interesting. Because it's got the purple around it, and it's quite a deep purple, it's trying to overcome feelings of insecurity in that area, trying to overcome those ideas, trying to, again, be the best person you can be, I would say. And we've got this lovely gold just off to the right here. Now, while that is orange here, that's because of the wall and the way that I took it out all up here. If you recall, you had all this background in. So that just changed in there, and I just thought, well, I'll leave that. I'm not too worried about it. But this is the actual colour right there, because I didn't want to chop your fingers off. If I chopped in the picture, I think everybody think, oh, no, she's got chopped off fingers, the poor girl. So it's a greeny gold, again, but it's really deep, deep blood red right in the very centre of that. And that just suggests very complex requirements. And that means that you don't really like boring people, I would say. That you get a bit bored with people that are just the same old, or they're always normal, they're always doing whatever it is people do that seems expected. You would find that, it gets tarnished fairly quickly with you. You would do things for a time, and then you would find after, not too long a time, if it didn't add to the excitement, if it didn't build, if it didn't deepen, if it didn't throw you a few curly whirlies, then you would probably sort of just let it go and think, I can find some better way to use my time. We've got this huge aqua area right here. Again, that's moving into past. That can be an interest in past lives, by the way, but quite often it's delving into the past to understand the present rather than living in the past. It's a nice bright colour. It's really good. It's around the mind, so it's thinking a lot, perhaps about situations that have happened, things that have gone on, and how they could be better in the future. But also you may be seeking that for other people. You may be looking for problems for them in the past, or things in their past or their past lives, and bringing that forward so that they could understand their modern self a little bit better. We have these three nice mauve, really, colours, little spots that are in them, and they're reflected over here. They look a little different, but they are reflected on the other side as well. And these are the acceptance colours, if you like, and because they're in little spots, you find yourself toing and froing between, this is what that is, this is what that's caused by, but it just wants to be this, or it came from that, so that's okay. I can hear this long explanation to work something through to a conclusion, so that it's understood really, really well. So you'd probably be quite a good learner. You'd probably be able to recall things very quickly, very efficiently most of the time. And when you have got that process in place, as long as you've got the ability to take the process and work it through, then you'll find yourself in a position to do what it is you need to do. It's like learning lines. If you think of it that way, as an actor learning lines, you would do it very, very well, because all you'd have to do is cue yourself, literally cue yourself, and then go through a particular process, and then you would have it off pat at the end. And that's the same for anything like that. As long as you weren't being interrupted or distracted and you could follow your process, you would be really, really good with that. We have this blue at the shoulder. Now, it's a very independent colour, so you could get frustrated when things call you, when you want to do something in particular in your own style or in your own way, and things stop you from doing that or hold you up. So in other words, you get a bit impatient when things, come out of the blue, when things interfere with what you're trying to do. You're not particularly flexible in that area because it's over your right shoulder. So you don't do well with a lot of interruptions, I suppose, is the way I would say that. And if somebody is trying to stop you from doing what you are doing so that you go and do something with them, you'd probably get a bit annoyed with them, my darling. Look at me laughing. That's me in a nutshell right there. It's like, leave me alone. And so we've got these green at the side of your throat. It's reflected just above the heart and then just down to the right of the lung, left of the lung, sorry, that's the left side over there. Now, these greens are semi-see-through and there's a little bit of yellow in them, but they do tend to be the word, not worry as in the mustard worry, but looking for the details, you know, the downside of some things. It's not overwhelming, but it is there. So you would be liable to use the word but, you know, so that's because it's at the throat there. And where there's a situation where you would be, somebody's giving you their scenario that sounds really good, you might quite likely be the one that turns around and goes, yeah, but, da-da-da-da-da. Unless it's your own idea, then it might be a bit different. There's that but, and that green right here of your throat is usually going to come out as a but, or, you know, have you thought of. So it's looking for that a little bit. It's not intense, but it's there. And that can be used in a constructive way as well. Because we've got the yellow in the middle of it, there's a trying to feel positive about things. It's looking for some positive in that thing. We've got the bright pink in the heart centre over here as well. And so it's that compassion is there. So they're nice little things to be in there. So you would find, if you could, you'd find the best way to sort of state any reservations. But I would say that being reserved about something or being cautious about something wouldn't be an uncommon thing for you. Now, we've got this indigo lined with green on the palm of your hand, so I would suggest you've been working with energy, working with healing, that kind of thing. You've got that, you can't see the other hand, but the other hand has that there too, pumping out quite nicely there. Massage, anything to use with the hands that comes to healing other people's bodies or minds or souls would go very, very well. But definitely energy expansions are in there. And then we have got the goldy yellow. We've got the 3 spots. Well, that goes all the way down that arm. Donk, donk, donk. So you have a fairly clear idea of what you want going forward, of the plan that you want to put out there, of the things that you would like to do. But at the same time, you're not set in stone. So because they've got the blobby nature, they're not just boom running down there. I would say that this is where I want to go, but I'm prepared to sort of make a change if it's going to work out better, if that makes sense. So it's bright, it's optimistic, there's nothing wrong with that at all, and it's a bit flexible. It's nicely flexible so that you can get to where you want to go without being overly concerned of how you get there. At each stage, you're quite happy to, if necessary, I will change and switch it up and move it along to something a little bit better. Any questions about that, my love, my dove? If you do, ask and fire away. That would be great. Or as always, can you read a bit forward regarding career and love, please? Sure thing. So the first thing looking forward for you, I've got shooting out from, just if you want to think of the right ear that we can see there, it's got the yellow coming across to the jaw. When it comes to career, you'll be very easily able to say what it is that you want. So I'd say you're communicating very well. So I suggest that probably within the next, I want to stretch it out to 14 months. I know that sounds like nothing much over 12 months, but over the next 14 months, I've got you positioning yourself in a way that you can actually then make a change, which is what I would call a consolidating. Can you hear that noise when it comes through now and again? It's like, oh, where'd that come from? Consolidating your learning or consolidating your skill sets so that you can use it in a particular employment. So I think that you're looking at either changing or starting a long-term set employment in 14 months' time. That's what it feels like there. That feels really positive for you, and it feels to be a thing that you just stay with. It stays with you for another 4 or 5 years after that, and yet you just keep taking yourself to a better, more solid level. You get more behind you, I suppose is the word, and then that puts you in a position where you feel very comfortable in your earning capacity, at which point I've pretty much got the idea that you will travel, you will move. I don't know if it's the word is travel for the sake of a holiday, but I think you will move, and a job will be a part of that. You will move and get a job, or you will move to get a job, take your pick. But that's a big move for you. It feels like a completely different space and place to where you're at now. What did I say? That was 4 years from now, and 14 months from now, you're consolidating your career sector, you are consolidating your skill sets. And love, let's have a look at love. Now, the first thing I've got around love is I've got a person who's a little bit unreliable to start with, and they sort of come into your life and then sort of leave your life. It's not terribly intense, but I feel that happening. I think you've got a shine on for this person, possibly now, I'm not sure, but it's not far away. But it doesn't quite seem to get together. It doesn't quite seem to put itself in the bracket that it's supposed to be, or that you'd like it to be. And I've got you sort of waning. I've got you sort of, okay, maybe I'll let that one go. Maybe I'm better off letting it go. And then it just comes back on full force for you. I think maybe at the 9th month. Where are we now? We're at the 10th. So that means it has to be next year as well. The 9th month, I'm pretty sure. That's September. It feels to be really strong. So you may have most of the year with this wandering. Oh, it stopped a moment. I heard this funny noise. Repeat which part. Oh, well, you'll hear it in the archives, so you can have a listen in the archives. After finished, it takes about half an hour, and then you'll hear exactly what I've said, I'm pretty sure. It is being recorded. But it's, just feels like most of the year sort of wafts in and out of a love energy that doesn't quite settle. And I don't mean just this year. It feels like it moves into next year. And it's just like it's in and out. It's not really intense. It's sort of is it or isn't it? And then September of next year, it does consolidate. It does sort of put itself in its right position. That means this person steps forward and sort of says, well, actually, let's be in. So it seems to me to be, because there isn't intensity to it, I'm not sure if it's, getting together and breaking up, or more just not quite getting it together and not quite sort of finding it a commitment in there. And so not being sure that it's worth the time or the energy. So that's what that all feels like to me. But it doesn't feel like a big problem, and it doesn't feel like a major issue for you going forward. It just feels like it's a bit early yet to be, well, with that person anyway, a bit early yet to be banking on it, if you like. So I don't really see an issue for that once you get into that latter part of next year. Someone close or far from you. My first thought is, because of the wafting in and out, my first thought is that it would be a person who's not directly close to you, or somebody you don't see too often at first. Somebody you don't see very often at all, or they have a bit of distance on them, and so they're sort of there and then they're not, they're sort of there and then they're not. The majority of that energy actually feels to be next year. So if there's anything in there at this stage, it would be very distant. It would be very loose, if you like. And it doesn't feel like an issue, more of, you've got a shine on. When I say that, that means not quite crush, but there's somebody you're attracted to, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And then all of a sudden it does. So that's quite nice. And it's really a large part of next year that I'm looking at, that this in and out energy is going on. So if you can sort of bear with that, then you could do quite well out of it. I've got a man, I've got a person who's got dark hair, really, really quite dark hair. I've got dark eyebrows as well, noticeably dark eyebrows with possibly lighter eyes. A leaner sort of look to them, not skinny, just a bit leaner to look at. Quite serious as a person, I guess. Not, not mean and nasty or anything like that, but fairly serious, and a person who sort of takes their time about things. They don't really give away too much, so you're not sure what's going on there for quite a while. having said that, it doesn't feel out of place. It's not as if it feels to me that you're already in this deep relationship and this person starts pulling it apart or not sharing with you and that kind of thing. It's more like it just takes a long time for it to find its feet, to find its moment. And I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, to be honest. Not really as a bad thing at all. So for that, I'd be quite relaxed, and it looks like both things are perhaps happening in the next year. And so if you've got 14 months for one, and I think actually now I'm counting that up, I don't think it would be too much different for the other, would it? Be in that 14-month frame for the career and the move thing going on. So the two might be linked together. So I better say that now, because I can see those two time frames. Although I've said September for one, the other one I've got 14 months. Now I'm thinking that's probably pretty close to each other. Welcome back. And you will be able to pick this up in the archive, so you will get all of that information that I've just given you. So I hope that helps you today. Have you got any other questions around that? Yeah. And so fantastic. That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming along. And we will cut this out at this stage if you haven't got any more questions. And for everybody listening on iHeartRadio or Spreaker, pop along to intuitalks.com, check out the other shows. There are a number of shows that run live every day. And you might want to catch up with me at energy-therapies.intuitalks.com. Ciao for now, everybody.